The Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Venezuelan head of state Nicolas Maduro met in Beijing as both leaders pledged to take bilateral relations to the highest level. Cuba sets all the details ahead of the summit of the G77 and China to be held in Havana as heads of state and leaders arrive in the island. The Russian President Vladimir Putin received his North Korean counterpart Kim Jong Un at the Vostok-Nizhny Cosmodrome, where he pledged support for the North Korean space race. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted a welcome ceremony for visiting Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on Wednesday. While receiving the head of state, the military band played the national anthems of Venezuela and China, and a one-gun salute was fired. Accompanied by Xi, Maduro reviewed the Guard of Honor of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, and the two heads of state also watched a march past of the Guard of Honor and the performance of the military band. Attending the ceremony were also Xi's wife, Pen Liyuan, and Venezuela's first combatant and deputy to the National Assembly, Cilia Flores. Upon receiving the Venezuelan president, Xi Jinping expressed his support for Venezuela's efforts to maintain its sovereignty, the national dignity and social stability, as well as to resist external interference. In a meeting at the Great People's Palace, the Chinese president assured that his country and Venezuela are good friends and partners. For his part, the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, thanked the authorities for the support of the Asian nation and assured that their relations are a model of the links between the countries of the Global South. During the meeting, both presidents announced that they will take diplomatic relations to the highest level. The Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, has been on an official visit to the Asian country since September the 8th, as he has been touring technological hubs and other sites of economic and social interest. This is the fifth visit to China as president. And the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, attended the closing ceremony of the 17th Joint China-Venezuela Commission, where he was together with the executive vice president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, and her executive cabinet. China and Venezuela focused during the conference on promoting unilateral development proposals for the evolution of both nations under the perspective of investments and growth. Likewise, Beijing and Caracas strengthened their bilateral and diplomatic ties to maintain the brotherhood between both nations. In other topics, the Salvadoran parliament has approved on Tuesday for the 18th time an extension of President Nayib Bukele's emergency regime. The Central American nation has now spent 17 months with limited constitutional guarantees as a strategy to reduce violence. The request, presented by the Minister of Security, Gustavo Villatoro, was approved by the ruling party Nuevas Ideas and its allies with 67 votes. Although the United Nations organization, based on evidence provided by Salvadoran organizations, has expressed concern about the length of time and the excesses committed under this regime, the President of Parliament has insisted on its effectiveness. In Guatemala, Bernardo Arévalo, the country's president-elect, suspended the transition process and announced measures against the members of the Public Prosecutor's Office. After completing the second protocolar step for the orderly handover of mandates agreed with President Alejandro Giammattei, Arévalo temporarily suspended the entire process. He claims that the conditions are not adequate after the Special Prosecutor's Office Against Impunity intervened at least 160 electoral boxes. The leader of the Semilla movement points directly to Attorney General Consuelo Porras, Prosecutor Rafael Curruchiche, and Judge Freddy Guevara, whom he identifies as the ringleaders of a coup d'etat.
As president-elect, I am addressing these officials to demand that they resign immediately from office, that they cease this assault on the Constitution and stop this persecution commanded by mafia groups and elites. Only their departure from office will guarantee the constitutional order of the country. We are filing a request for a preliminary trial against the prosecutor Consuelo Porras and the judge Freddy Orellana, and a complaint against the prosecutor Rafael Curruchiche and the assistant prosecutor Cynthia Monterroso.
Arevalo informed that the decision to suspend the process of the change of government was communicated to the National Executive.
In view of the situation caused by these officials, we have informed President Alejandro Yamatei that we are temporarily suspending our participation in the administrative transition process until the necessary institutional political conditions have been reestablished.
The president-elect of Guatemala, Fernando Arevalo, once again linked members of the prosecutor's office and the judiciary to a coup d'etat, alluding as part of the conspiracy to some political figures defeated in the ballot.
Guatemalans, the coup perpetrators must resign. The Attorney General Consuelo Porras, the prosecutor Rafael Curruchiche, and the judge Freddy Orellana, in perverse association, have undertaken a new escalation in the ongoing coup d'etat that they began at the end of the first round of elections, granting a judicial disguise to a shady political action of the UNE party.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday, Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla offered a press conference ahead of the G77 and China summit to be held in Havana. The diplomat defined the main guidelines of the Global South gathering.
The summit intends to evaluate and debate the main challenges as well as the core development issues affecting the nations of the South and the indispensable contribution to be made by science, technology, and innovation for development.
Rodriguez Parrilla also explained the relevance of the summit for future similar gatherings and other advances of South-South cooperation.
Next Havana summit to be held in the next few days will contribute to promote the voice of the G77 and China under the present international circumstances as part of the relevant negotiation intergovernmental processes that will take place very soon. Among them, the Summit on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Conference of the Parties under the Framework Convention of the United Nations on Climate Change, COP28, the third South Summit to be held early next year, and the Summit of the Future.
The summit of heads of state and government of the G77 plus China will take place in Havana on September 15th and 16th with the purpose of reinforcing unity and deciding on collective and practical actions to face contemporary challenges. Our correspondent in Havana, Fabiola Lopez, tells us more about it.
This September 2023, Havana will become the capital of the Global South when the leaders of the Group of 77 and China will meet in this city to discuss current development challenges as well as the role of science, technology and innovation.
This is an indispensable summit. In the midst of the economic and multidimensional crisis that is occurring on a planetary scale, at a time when the countries of the South are seeking a solution to these problems within the scopes of independence, sovereignty, and a greater degree. I would say of awareness of where the roads that will take us toward development must lead.
23 years ago, when inaugurating the first South Summit, the supreme decision-making body of the G77 and China, precisely in Havana, Fidel Castro said that in the globalized world, where knowledge is the key to development, the technological gap between the North and the South was widening in the conditions of increasing privatization of scientific research and its results.
Never before has humanity had such a formidable scientific and technical potential, such an extraordinary capacity to generate wealth and well-being, and never before has the world been so unequal and inequality so profound.
The special representative of the Group of 77 in China, Ambassador Pedro Luis Pedroso, explains to TeleSUR that today more than ever, developing countries and the world as a whole need to move towards a new philosophy and paradigm of development because the resource base on which humankind sustains is increasingly depleted.
El capitalismo no sacrifica consumo.
Capitalism does not sacrifice consumption for men, which is proven and demonstrated. Then the only way to advance towards a new paradigm is not only with a political orientation that leads to that, but it has to be on a technological and innovative basis. If Cuba, in the midst of the most complex and difficult situation it has gone through, which was not only a blockade intensified to unprecedented levels, but also the consequences of the Cuban COVID period, and Cuba in the midst of that was able to produce 5 vaccines, 3 of them already in the market in use. So, what we 134 countries can't do if we decide to unite our individual potentials?
In calling the meeting in Havana, President Miguel Díaz-Canel considered that the scientific technical progress that is key to achieving development is inaccessible to a large part of humanity and has its roots in the unfair international economic order.
We can do many things if we decide to unite our potentialities, our capacities, our resources, and we will not necessarily have to depend on the North, as it would be a new source of liberation of the South. And therefore, what we intend with the summit is that, to say that we have potentialities among us, we can do many things.
Cuba's commitment is to promote international solidarity and cooperation among the countries of the South by advocating the use of science, technology, and innovation as engines of sustainable development.
Fabiola López, TeleSUR, La Habana.
We have a second short break coming up, but before, we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, and there you will be able to rewatch our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We have a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. On Wednesday, the Russian President Vladimir Putin received his North Korean counterpart, Kim Jong Un, at the Vostochny Cosmodrome, where he pledged support for the North Korean space race. Hours earlier, in an interview to his nation's media, the North Korean leader had described his trip as an expression of the strategic importance Pyongyang attaches to bilateral relations with Moscow. In the first part of the meeting, they toured the base facilities, including the Soyuz 2 rocket launch pad. Although the Russian president assured that various issues will be discussed calmly at Wednesday's meeting and said that his country will support the space race launched by Pyongyang.
Of course, we need to discuss economic cooperation and humanitarian issues, the situation in the region. We have a lot of issues to discuss. I want to say that I am very glad to see you and thank you for accepting the invitation and coming to Russia.
During the official meeting, North Korea's leader Kim Jong Un told Russian President Vladimir Putin that Pyongyang will make bilateral ties with Moscow its #1 priority.
It is our government's strong position that we will prioritize the North Korea-Russia relationship and put it as the #1 priority of our foreign policy from now on. We have always expressed full and unconditional support for all the measures taken by the Russian government and President Putin. And I take this opportunity again to affirm that we will always be with Russia at the front line of the struggle for independence against imperialism.
In other topics, Italy received in only 24 hours more than 5,000 immigrants coming mostly from Libya and Tunisia. In the midst of the migratory wave, a 5-month-old baby lost his life when a boat he was traveling in capsized. The island of Lampedusa issued an alert as on Tuesday alone received 5,112 migrants and refugees. The trend continued in the morning of this Wednesday, where it estimated that about 30 boats crossed the Italian coast. Emergency services reported the overturning of a vessel in which about 40 migrants were traveling. The Coast Guard heeded the call for help as they were getting ready to board the patrol. A baby of Guinean origin traveling with 4 families fell into the waters of the Mediterranean. The number of children in poverty in the United States has doubled. The nation now has more than 9 million. According to official data, this is the largest increase in poverty for children in just 1 year in the history of this country. According to Sharon Parrott, who chairs the Center for Budget and Policy Authorities and Priorities, this increase is the responsibility of the Congress. The overall poverty rate has also increased from 7.8% to 12.4%. Experts say these figures are the result of policy decisions that prioritize tax cuts for the wealthy, the main beneficiaries of federal assistance. We move on to other topics. In Libya, more than 5,000 people have died in the coastal city of Derna alone. Thousands are still missing and likely to add to the death toll. Broken roads, failed communication networks, the legacy of years of civil conflict, and the effects of climate change contributed to making Libya one of the world's most humanitarian crises, said Eli Abudabun, Libya director of the International Rescue Committee. According to officials, more than 5,300 dead have been counted as dead, but the number could double given the number of missing people. Officials in the coastal town of Tokra, to the west of Derna and the east of Benghazi, warned on Wednesday that a dam there could also collapse and cause similar scenes of destruction, the state-run Libyan news agency reported. Officials urged nearby residents to leave immediately. Egypt has sent 3 military cargo planes to Libya on Tuesday with a large quantity of humanitarian aid to the victims of the recent catastrophic flash floods in the country. According to a press release by Egypt's defense ministry, the assistance includes medicine, medical supplies, tents, and search and rescue teams, and is part of Egypt's solidarity with the Libyan people to help alleviate the effects of the recent storm Daniel. And the Pope Francis uses his weekly audience to pray for the victims of the flooding in Libya and for the people of Morocco hit by a deadly earthquake.
My thoughts are with the people of Libya hit hard by violent rains that caused flooding and inundation, causing numerous deaths and injuries as well as an extensive damage.
In Sudan, over 100 people, mostly civilians, have been killed in bombings in the capital region in the last 48 hours. The Sudanese non-governmental organization, Lawyers for Emergencies, denounces indiscriminate bombings in residential areas and markets in Khartoum, the capital, and Omdurman. They blame the attacks on both the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. Between the Nile and Omdurman regions, almost 51 people were killed by aerial artillery between Sunday and Monday, in addition to the 53 victims of the bombing of a market in Khartoum that left about 300 wounded on Monday. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.